Hello and welcome to Starcraft 2. I'm Colonel Buck. This is part 2 of a 3-part series between Whitra and JYP. This is the map Daybreak, and again, it is a PvP, a Protoss versus Protoss, which is somewhat interesting. I don't often see these kind of things, even off one-off games, and I very rarely see them as a series. I know about speaking. This is what I do. I sit here and I speak. I'm going to bring up the production tab, and it's interesting just watching the same kinds of builds being handled in the same kinds of ways, and how slight deviations of that can very quickly beat one another. And I found I've done a ZVZ already, and this is my second PvP. Excuse me. And it's been interesting just seeing how both players always want to keep an exact eye, even more so than if they're if they're facing the Protoss, or whether they're facing the Zerg, or whether they're facing the Terrans. You know, they just want to keep an eye on those builds and see where they're going. We're off to a roaring start today, aren't we? But never mind, we're just going to enjoy it, sit back. We've got gateways coming out, we've got probes coming out. It's not too exciting. And I suppose the main reason you don't see the kind of things commented very often is because they're not necessarily the most exciting things to watch or speak about. Normally you can just cut back and forth between the various forces and talk about it. I might just talk about who we've got where. We have Whitra in the top right hand corner as the red Protoss player, and we have JVP in the bottom left hand corner. Interestingly, JVP pushing out to scout just that little bit earlier on. It was interesting in the first game, quite early on, both players used their probes to zoom around and to have a look at their own bases, their own expansions, looking for any kind of harass. But, you know, I think these two players are gentlemen. It's not the kind of thing that they're particularly interested in doing. Out comes the assimilator for Whitra, and whether we're going to see a similar assimilator, we already have seen an assimilator. He's slightly further ahead for JYP, you know, deciding to get just those few extra probes. However, we have 2 gateways again coming up for Whitra. Whitra sitting slightly gateway heavier than JYP. However, that second gateway is coming out, so second assimilator coming out for JYP, and both assimilators now up for Whitra. So, I mean, it's a mirror game. It's a mirror matchup. Both players are using more or less the same strategy. No forge, fast, expand. No cannon, harass. So I think it's largely down to the skill of the players. I mean, the game really is down to the skill of the players, but especially when they're going with such similar strategies. Look, it's 4 minutes 20 in. These people have got their timings down perfect. You know, both players sitting a probe on the Zelnaga towers at the exact same time. I mean, how fantastic is that? Whitra running around with a Stalker here, JYP rather, running around a Stalker in his main base, and he's just having a look around, making sure the other player isn't up to no good. It's kind of one of those things, you know, I think they suspect that the other player is not going to do any funny business, but they know that if they don't check it out, then they, you know, there's the very slight possibility that they might come up with some kind of cheese or some kind of hidden expansion or something odd like that. On the other hand, the moment they get a scout on the other person's base, they know exactly what they're up against. I mean, so JYP coming out with a Zealot, you know, that's exciting. Robo facility coming out for Whitra. I do not believe JYP has come up with a Robo facility, which I assume is going to be just for that exciting Robo stuff. But you know, I enjoy that. Oh, JYP coming out with a hidden pylon again. He did that in the first game, and you know, it's been highly successful. And again, Whitra coming for an expansion a touch earlier, I believe, than last time. And what's going to happen, I think, is JYP is going to try and punish Whitra for that, and I imagine Whitra is going to succeed in fending it off, because Whitra is a very good player. A secondary hidden pylon. JYP, a very strong player again, playing very aggressively. You know, as I said, I suspect he's going to try and punish Whitra for coming up with an expansion. I mean, really, with these kind of games, these kind of mirror matchup games, it's sort of whoever blinks first, whoever deviates thirst will then be punished for that deviation. So Dark Shrine, Twilight Council, so perhaps some Dark Templar. That could be it. I don't often see Dark Templar used against Protoss, I must confess. Now, interestingly, a lot of the times you'll try and see a wall off between this ramp and the expansion, but Whitra not really focused on that. I don't think he necessarily... there's the DT. I don't think he necessarily has his heart in the expansion. He's not necessarily prepared to lose it, but he's not prepared to put in a ton of resources in protecting it. JYP chasing off Whitra's forces, giving Whitra a moment to recover, but I suspect Whitra wanted to go out and try and prevent that pylon. I imagine he's going to turn back, try and take out the pylon, preventing more units coming in. And Whitra has forfeited this expansion. He has no interest in keeping it whatsoever. JYC using that opportunity to come up with his own expansion, which of course he should when you push off, push out. Sometimes I do wish you could click on a force field and find out who the force field comes from, particularly these kind of matchups. That pylon did not get taken out. That poor stalker. Whitra not in a great position. He perhaps should have waited a moment longer before coming out with this expansion, because he is being severely punished for it. He's being published. Book. Don't expand, dummies. Now JYC has got his expansion up and running, and even though Whitra's expansion hasn't been taken out, he is significantly far behind at this point. I think other players that aren't what Whitra might have called the GG at this stage. On the other hand, other players loses that warp prison. That could have been fantastically handy. I wouldn't be surprised if Whitra turns back, takes out that expansion. On the other hand, he wants to make sure that JYC is running away, and he's going to do that with an observer. Whitra now saturating his expansion. JYC's expansion already saturated, but realistically they're only about 2.5 minutes away from one another, and you know, the micromanagement of this game could end up causing it to go in either direction at this point. Having said that, this is a best of 3 series, and Whitra is on the first one, so, you know, I really wouldn't be surprised if Whitra ends up losing, but I have seen stranger things. So JVP just pulling back. He's aware that it's often customary once attacking and very much losing your expansion that the other player will push out, and he's just making sure that that's not what happens. Whitra keeping a very good eye on what's going on here, with some observer action, which is great. And that expansion. So JYC coming out with his observer, coming out with Blink. He does love his Blink, whereas Whitra concentrating on Colossus and those other slightly higher tech units. And he does love his Immortals. Almost all the games I've seen with Whitra, he has stuck with 1 or 2. Excuse me, Immortals, just for whatever reason. I think he likes the name. No, now just looking at upgrades, I believe everyone is currently 0-0-0. Even though we're 12 minutes in, the game has been a little bit intense. You know, for the first 4.5, 5 minutes, nothing. But then intensity. Now it's interesting the way that he spreads his units out. Now this is interesting. JYC, yep. JYC coming out with another Dark Templar, meeting up with the main Stalker force. And of course the Dark Templar are going to just mean that the Observer is going to have to stay with Whitra's army at basically all times. I suspect Whitra is going to have to be aggressive very, very soon in order to... I mean, he's not necessarily out of the game, because they are, you know, very, very even. As is still, I mean, 92 to 102, there's only 10 units difference. But if he could do some kind of economic damage, that would certainly put him significantly further ahead. decides to take out the destructible terrain. Poor DT. It's not the DT's day. I mean, DT harass can be so fantastic against most other people, frankly. But not against Whitra, not against another Protoss player. So both armies just dancing back and forth at one another. Whitra's army looking significantly larger. On the other hand, he JYP rather, keeping an army back. I will apologise if I keep getting these names mixed up. JYP sitting with an army about equal size at home, and that could be his downfall, frankly, because if Whitra decides to push on this army, he could easily take that out, and then the remainder could very, very probably take out this. So a pylon at JYC's 3rd and 4th, along with here. He loves his pylons, he loves his warp gates. Whereas Whitra seems to enjoy warp prisons more, just because of that mobility. And Whitra coming for a 3rd. I would be surprised if that means that JYP, oh dear, why do I keep on saying C? JYP would come up with his own expansion, immediately scouting that. JYP. You wait, there's going to be 1,400 comments in this, under this video going, "You keep saying his name wrong." That's how YouTubers speak, obviously. Along comes the Blinky Stalkers coming out, a bit of a scout. Quite a large scouting force, frankly, but often when these kind of small attacks come out and draw the main army away, that is often used as a distracting tactic for a large army to come in and through. So Whitra's 3rd base almost completed, and of course JYP follows with his own, including a couple more pylons, and I really wouldn't be surprised if we see some cannons set up here. Interestingly, Whitra, unlike most other Protoss players, does not seem to cover his expansions with bucket loads of cannons. I think he feels he has the APM to deal with it as is, or perhaps if he was against a Zerg player, he most certainly would. I mean, Protoss players tend to treat their armies as giant death balls that just travel around as is. Oof. Now that is a death ball. So, JYP sitting at 168, Whitra 155, still that little, just that touch further behind. On the other hand, he is now mining from his expansion, and JYP very quickly mining from his. Both armies, more or less, depending on where this encounter takes place and how well both players use their position. I think it could go either way. Whitra clearly ready to go in. 5 Colossus as opposed to the full 5 Colossus of JYP. That expansion up and running. I think JYP has spent a lot more resources putting down things like those photon cannons around his expansions, whereas Whitra didn't. Whitra finally setting up a pylon of his own. His one singular pylon. Here comes a warp prison full of zealots, which I imagine is going to drop in the main and try and take out some probes. But there aren't that many probes left. But he did just run through his entire army. But I imagine JYP somewhat distracted by this humongous battle that's happening right here, and both players losing masses of their force, obscene levels of their forces. The Colossus, basically the only thing that's left. JYP with a handful of Stalkers and Archons. I think this base may be gone, and Whitra calls the good game well played. Well, that was close. I mean, frankly, I think if Whitra had done the same thing and pushed here, it could have gone the opposite direction. But, great game. Lovely part 2. I'm really enjoying this mirror matchup stuff. Stick with us, we have part 3, the final part, coming up soon, and it could be anyone's game at this stage. Haha, how fantastic. Right, see you guys later on.